I'm Chris. On this episode of the podcast, Patrick Hickey Jr. returns. Star of the Megacat Studios game WrestleQuest, Hickey Jr. talks his journey with Megacat and how his lifelong passion of professional wrestling prepared him for his role as Randy Muchacho Man Santos. Voicing dozens of characters in the game, Hickey Jr. tells us why WrestleQuest gives fans of turn-based RPGs exactly what they've been waiting for. Listen in. Hey, what's up, Patrick? How you been?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's been a crazy week and a half since this game came out. My inbox has literally been flooded every single day. But I'm recovering. I'm good. It's been fun.
Yeah. And in terms of like, I know you've been living with this for a while, not just, doing the voiceover work and all that for WrestleQuest, but like you've been on the road with this game. You've been with the developers. You've been, like as big of as an ambassador as someone can be for a project. So what's it like to be on the other side of it now that people are getting to see it in the masses? It's not just something you're seeing at conventions and stuff like that, but like people have responded pretty well to it. And it's been awesome to see that, especially like me knowing you for as long as I have, to see you kind of, you're a part of wrestling history now. I think, being in a project like this, like your name is in the credits with, a Jeff Jarrett, all those things. So
Yeah.
what's that been like?
It's been crazy. I mean, this isn't like my first game that's come out like between, the Padre One Shell and the sequel One Shell Straight to Hell and then like BPM Boy. Those all got like really good reviews and stuff, but this was like you nailed it. It's been 3 years of me speaking at PAX East twice at panels, speaking at PAX West, MagFest. We did Starcade. Like we had a booth at Ric Flair's last match. I mean, I've traveled to Tennessee, Seattle, Boston, all over the place with these guys. I mean, imagine 4 or 5 of us in a hotel room talking video games, and I was recording a voiceover for the game like in the morning of like PAX East and like in the hotel room. Like I've lived a little bit during this entire process. This has been like easily like the most hands-on that I've been. Um it's been great.
Yeah.
It's been great. It's like I've been wanting to say like something like this for a long time, and it's like I've never like really been asked the question, but it's like in such a crazy way, like Megacat Studios and Skybound like gave me like such an added incentive to my life.
Yeah.
Um, so like I've been a college professor for 17 years. I've been a journalist for 17 years. I've written 7 books on video game history. But it's like I've lived a very insular life, like in New York.
Yeah.
I've done some traveling when I was an editor at NBC and stuff, but most of the time it was like in New York. And having kids made me that much more of like a hermit, where I would just teach and come home, and I would want to spend as much time with my wife and kids and stuff. And when I started doing voiceover for WrestleQuest, eventually the guys were like, "Yo, listen, we need you to do a panel at PAX East with us," which means you're gonna have to like fly to Boston. And I'm just like, oh my god, like I don't want to leave my family,
Yeah.
you know? And my wife is like, no, you need to go. Like your career is like starting to, this is an opportunity for you. And I like the first time they asked me to go to PAX East with them, I said no. And my wife got really pissed off at me and she was like, you should have went and blah blah blah. So then the next time I said if they ever ask me again, or if anybody asks me to do something like business related to travel, if I have to spend a night or 2 or 3 away from the kids and you, I don't want to, but I'm going to. And I did. And then, oh my God, the floodgates just opened. Like I just came back from Chicago, which was something completely unrelated to WrestleQuest. It was like for my comic books and stuff like that. But like spending all of this time with these guys, like I've been a part of this team. The game's been in development for like 4.5 years and I've been on the team for like 3. So it's just like I've seen the game change throughout development. It's been so much fun and so crazy.
That's awesome. Like, again, I've known you for quite a while. I was one of your students. And it's crazy to see, like, for me, to see that growth, like like, even when I was in your class, you were working 2 jobs. You're doing NBC and almost like 3 because you're writing on your own
Yeah,
website, you're at
yeah,
NBC, and all those things. And what's crazy is that you, as a parent, you've only been working harder.
yeah,
You have your own comic imprint. You are, traveling with this game, still writing,
yeah,
still
yeah,
teaching full time, the
yep.
head of, your department. So that's just crazy. And like you said, it's cool to kind of have that extra incentive. I think we all need that motivation. And I think, our kids are that extra motivation sometimes. You want to leave them with something. You want them to be like,
Absolutely.
hey, my dad did this, or my dad left me with this. So it's awesome to see that. And just going back, because when I initially like reached out to you, I was like, hey, do you know the guys on this game? I was like, Patrick would know. And then it was like, I guess I had like brain fogged. I was like, wait, I've been seeing this guy on the road for a game for 2 years, and I never put two and two together. So it's cool to see like all that hard work come out, and the response has been crazy. Obviously, you've had some amazing opportunities, whether it be interviews, traveling, and stuff like that. So it's been really cool to see. And for you, like, what's it been like kind of creating the character? I know you voice way too many in the game. So what was it like to kind of to do that, to be that involved, and also be the head of a game that's really being like spotlighted? It's not something like some indie game where it's like, all right, like you go 20 pages down on the Switch sale page and there's the game. This is like a big level, and it's being spotlighted that like that. So what's it like to kind of do that?
I mean, yeah, like so I would say like my official role on the game is like lead voiceover. Um as of like right now, I voice that I know of like spoken word like dialogue 16 characters, but then like we're talking like I do grunts and like identification sounds for like easily twice as many of those characters. So it's like some characters don't have spoken lines, but like when they get hit, you hear,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
that's me, So the way it started was the WrestleQuest, the Megacat Studios that does WrestleQuest. I've known them for 10 years doing journalism, and I saw them releasing new NES and Sega Genesis games, and I'm like, yo, we need to talk for review fix. And I just kept in contact with their CEO, and we would check in with each other like every couple of months. And like I remember they started growing, and they talked about like bringing me on in like a brand ambassador role and like helping them write press releases and pitch and things like that, because I mean, I love to do that stuff.
Mm.
um and then I started writing the Minds Behind the Games books, and then they got into the Minds Behind Adventure games because I love them and I wanted to feature an indie game in there. So we talked Coffee Crisis. Um, and then the Padre came out and they were like, "Oh, you do voiceover?" And I'm like, "Yes." And I did some trailer work for them. I did some writing on a game that's not released yet that I can't really talk about, but I did some writing, a nice
Mm.
amount of writing on a really cool RPG. Um, and then they approached me about WrestleQuest, and they're like, "Can you do Macho Man?" I'm like, "Yes, I can absolutely do Macho Man." So I did Macho Man for them, and then right around this time, I started doing what's it called? Announcing for Battle Club Pro, ring announcing. So I'm playing like the beta and the alpha and like early builds of the game, and I'm like, I see like the opening cinematic where Macho Man Randy Savage comes out, and I'm like, guys, I just did ring announcing. Why don't I do ring announcing in the game too? So it went from doing like Macho Man and then ring announcing. Then it was just like, oh, can you do some of the NPCs? And I'm like, yeah. And they threw like 40, 50 NPCs at me. And the cool part was, and I've said this before in other interviews, but not to the link that I'll go through here, but it's just like basically they would write some killer stuff for these NPCs and give me background on who these NPCs are and stuff like that. But still, at its very core level, it was just like, here's a pixel art character. What do you got? You know? And it's just like there's a when you download the game and you start playing it, there's a tag team that you start playing in the beginning, and it's just like these really like two big like guys. They remind me of the guy that's in the wooden cabin in Frozen. The guy with that he's huge and he's
Yeah.
got like a really, so it's like imagine like a tag team. It's just two guys like that. So yeah, I started talking like this. Yeah, ooh, and it's like every time they get hit, they go like ooh, ah, yeah, and it's like I've gotten so many emails from people that are like, is that you? That sounds like you. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. They're like, oh my God, dude, that voice is like perfect. And then there's a character, he's one of the 12 playable characters, and his name's Toy Box Jimmy. And oh my God, he just totally reminds me of like this like little badass, like that just like he runs a gang. That's like he runs a gang and is like a car thief and stuff. He's great. And it's like it's Toy Box Jimmy over here. How you doing? Blah, blah. So it's just like they just gave me all of these characters and were like, have as much fun as you possibly want. And then some guys, after the NPCs, then it was like some of the licensed guys that are no longer here. So I mean, to me, I am a huge wrestling fan. Like I've interviewed easily over 100 pro wrestlers, and it's just like it's so funny when I met Jeff Jarrett in person for the first time. We were having like a steak dinner, me, him, and like the rest of the development team, and they introduced me, and I'm like, I interviewed you like 10 years ago over the phone, and he's like, really? Like for what? And I'm like, that movie that you executive produced, The Saint, and he's like, oh my God, like, and then we had like this 45-minute conversation on like cinematography and pro wrestling,
Yeah.
and like he's so cool. Like I love Jeff Jarrett. He's a great guy. But like then it was just like, okay, so Jeff's involved in the game. Jeff's obviously gonna voice himself,
Yeah.
but it's like people like Andre the Giant, the Road Warriors and stuff, and then maybe some of the guys that aren't inclined to really like do voiceover, you know. So being able to do people like Junkyard Dog's voice, and like I told them, I'm like, if I'm gonna do Junkyard Dog, I'm gonna sing, and they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, this guy used to like sing in his promos, like I feel so good. And I'm like, I'm doing that, and I did it, and and it's like I had so much fun, but yeah, I got in because I could do Macho Man, and then um the Megacat people we just vibe, you know, like I'm sure you've been in this situation, Chris, where it's just like you work with people online for months, years. I know people now online because I'm old ass. I'm 40. Um, where like I know people online for like 15 years. And I've gotten them jobs and I've given them recommendations and they've written for Review Fix, or I've gotten them other jobs at other places and I've never met them in person. And that's fine. But then every once in a while you meet somebody that you know online for like 8 or 10 years, and that was the case with the Megacat guys. I met them in person and it was just like we just instantly clicked, and there was no like weirdness and stuff. It was just like they knew who I was, I knew who they were, and we just kicked ass. And it was just like James at one point, the CEO of Megacat, he's just like, he's like, you're like Pat the Cat, like he's like, you're one of us, like you're just like you just and I'm like, listen, that's the way it feels. It just feels like we're just all on the same page, we're all about the same thing. And I have so much respect for those guys. So when they asked me to like be a part of the team, I knew, because like the indie stuff that I had done before was a lot of fun, and having games on like Nintendo Switch and stuff a lot of fun. But like when people like this come to you, and like they've helped me so much with like my stuff with Legacy, you know. It just it changed a lot of stuff. Like the last 2 years have been insanely good, and a lot of that has to do with this game.
Yep. And again, that's like awesome because like you're a part of something and you're really, it seems like they gave you a lot of freedom to really
Yeah.
explore and really
Oh yeah.
dive in. And for you, like obviously you've been voice acting for years now. Like was there anything you took away from the experience where you feel like, oh, like I made the right choice like pursuing this, or you feel that like you're ready for that next opportunity?
Oh my God, Chris. Real talk. Super super real talk. It's so hard to be an academic and have fun. I probably shouldn't even say this, but I'm
Mm,
going to say it.
mm,
It's like if you're an academic and you teach, I've basically been told over the 17 years that I've taught journalism in English, do not post pictures of you playing video games. You went to Nintendo World this past weekend
mhm,
and you took a picture with Pikachu. Are you a professional? Or are you a kid? And blah blah blah. And I'm just
mm,
like, wow, wow. And then I remember when my first book came out, they were like, listen, don't expect anyone to take you seriously. It's a book about video games. And I'm just like, I'm a journalist that just went out and interviewed like 85 great creators, many of who have never been interviewed before. Like this is This is like exactly what a scholar is supposed to do. And they were just like, oh, but it's about video games, blah, blah, blah. And then I started doing the voiceover stuff. And then they were like, oh, this is just you joking around because, you know,
When a man talks like this,
Mhm.
it's like you can't be taken seriously. I'm Alexander the Padre and blah blah blah.
and then I start doing trailers, you know, like
Coming soon for the Nintendo Switch.
and they're just like, you're just like a big kid. And I was like branded as like this big kid. And I'm just like, no, I'm like somebody that like loves pop culture, loves, I'm a historian. I've written thousands of articles. I have almost 20 years of editorial experience. Like what kid growing up wouldn't want to like work and cover like Saturday Night Live? What guy wouldn't want to have like their voice featured in the intro to a video game? What person, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's just
Yeah.
like it's been super hard for me, and like luckily like I've basically either outlived or outworked the people that like were the biggest toxicity, like the biggest pieces of toxicity in my life as far as that goes professionally. Like they don't have a say in me anymore, but it's just like for me, um the Padre was so much fun because it was like it started off with me just editing dialogue, and then I finally got to show people that I could voice act. And then once that happened, and then I had somebody like James come to me. I mean imagine going from working on the Padre and doing trailers where you're just reading lines and you know you're good at it, and you know that like, you know, people just want like specific voices, like that deep baritone is like
Mhm.
what people like for me, you know,
In a world, one man.
like that will make me a couple of $1,000s every year until I
Mhm.
can't do it anymore,
Yeah.
you know. um but it's like I think I could do more than that. And when these guys said, oh, just let's see what you can do, and I start throwing all these other things in there, I mean, it was scary. um there's absolutely like moments of doubt. You definitely get like imposter syndrome, like can I do this? Should I be here? And then it's just like I remember the first PAX East, Xavier Woods was at our booth, and then the completionist from G4 comes over and starts interviewing all of us, and I'm joking around and I'm being a wise ass and stuff like that. And at that moment I was just kind of like, not only do I belong here, but we all belong here.
Mhm.
You know, like the imposter syndrome was gone, and it was just like we're all, this entire team is working like incredibly hard, you know. And it's like in between, like when I was on WrestleQuest for probably like 6 months, and then they came to me and they're like, oh, we have another game that's in development, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, do you want to work on it? I'm like, well, what is it? And they're like, oh, it's World Championship Boxing Manager 2. And I'm like, the first one is like a text-based boxing game that's like super cult classic. Like the writing is like super tongue-in-cheek, like it's on abandonware now, like it's impossible to find, but like boxing fans love this game. And I'm like, you guys are doing a sequel? And he's like, you know, James is like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm in. And so it's like within like just being like doing the Padre and then doing some stuff for some smaller indies and doing a lot of trailers, it's like I didn't know if I was gonna get like another like starring role opportunity and stuff like that. So then it's just like I get put on WrestleQuest, and then I'm doing like 75 to 90 voices on WrestleQuest, and then I did like 30 voices on World Championship Boxing Manager, and it was just like all of a sudden it went from this to this in like the span of months. And then I mean now I'm on 4 games currently in development, you know. um and it's more than just Megacat and stuff like that. I'm like, I could never thank them
Yeah.
enough for the opportunities they gave me. But to answer your question, like I wouldn't change a thing. And like me coming out of my comfort zone and finally just like saying like I'm gonna do this, like. And it's funny because it's like I was always worried that my kids would like be upset that I would be gone for like a couple of days at a time. And it's just like, man, my daughter, she tells people all the time, you know, like my dad does this and my dad's done that, and my dad creates characters and my dad does it. So it's just like everything worked out the way that it was supposed to. And like that's the thing too, like I'm far from done, you know. So
Yeah, and one thing that's consistent in terms of like your journey is really the work ethic. I think you've been able to have success in about every field you jumped into because you're like, I don't know if this is gonna work, but I'm gonna work hard at it. And then the
yeah.
opportunity presents itself, and you're able to like really kick that door open, which has been awesome to see. Whether it be like you know you getting the opportunity to write like, hey, I'm gonna write one comic for this imprint, whatever. You turn that into your whole universe
Yeah.
once you get
Yeah.
that opportunity.
Yep.
You do some little voiceovers, stuff like that. You get a starring role, you promote it to death, and then people are like, oh wait, you do voiceover? Like, we're working on this big thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been awesome to see you be able to navigate it, because it's hard to wear that many hats. You know what I mean? It'd be
Sure.
easy to be like, all right, I'm gonna take off the gas on this and stuff,
Yeah.
but you've been able to kind of go full throttle on everything you've been doing, which has been really awesome and great to see, and inspirational. I think that's why you're really great at what you do as an academic. It's like, hey, like, we've all been there where we're sitting in a class and we're like, hey, has this person done any of the things they're telling me to do?
Yeah.
And especially kids of this generation, it's very, you kind of have that buy-in as soon as you walk in the door, because if not, they'll tune you out,
Yep.
as I'm sure you
It's
see.
crazy. It's like I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're like, I went to Review Fix the other day, and I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you never stopped writing for Review Fix. And I'm like, no. I'm like, since 2009, I've written at least one article every day for Review Fix. And they're like, even when you were doing the books? I'm like, yes. They're like, even like the day your kid was born? I'm like, kids. I'm like, yeah. So it's just like, it's so hard to like try and explain to people that like, because so many people, like, I've been approached by so many people over the past like 6 months that didn't know who I was, and they're
Yeah.
just like, oh man, this has just happened like overnight for you. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, no, no, it hasn't. And it's just like, I try and explain to, like, I have a 15-year-old nephew and I have a 20-year-old nephew, and I just try and explain to them all the time, like, you have to work your ass off. Like, I mean, even now, I'm gonna get off of this podcast. I'm gonna go upstairs. I'm gonna watch Raw and bang out my Raw article, and then I'm gonna message all of my artists because we have 6 Halloween books coming out this fall. And like, it doesn't stop. And it's just like, I have a stream I have to do tomorrow night for Megacat. Oh my god, they're so much fun, because like they set me up with a really great gaming PC,
Mm.
and they created a rig, an animation rig that like connects like Muchacho Man to me. So like when you look at the camera, it's Muchacho Man and he's talking, and
So I just talked the entire hour. We're playing the game, and it's like, yeah, can you dig it? Yeah.
and it's so much fun. We've Chris Van Vliet interviewed me 2 weeks ago as Muchacho Man. Like, that was insane. So it's just like, the only way to like success, I think, is like that slow burn. You can go viral, and it's like, you just have to have like this continuing like lineage, this continuing like source of like people, like, all right, so this guy's like stats are consistent for the last 20 years. Like, this guy does what he says he does, and it's like, I'll never ask anyone to do something that I wouldn't be comfortable doing myself. And it's just like, I had an artist the other day that was late on deadline, and it's like, oh, my hand really hurts. I've been drawing really hard for like 4 days, and I was just like, okay, so you're done. You don't have to draw anymore. And he's just like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I went out and I had another artist go in and tighten up his stuff and finish it. I mean, it's not unheard of in the comic book
Yeah.
industry. It happens all the time. But it's just like, if you can't, like, my whole thing is like, if you want to run with me, you got to run with me.
Mm.
Like, you nailed it. Like, we live in a
Mm.
time now where like kids are kind of like, you know, I remember when I went to Kingsborough and I went to Brooklyn College, and it's just like, when I had somebody that said that they were a Pulitzer Prize winner, and I've had Pulitzer Prize winning professors, and I was just like, I'm going to listen to what you say because
Mm.
you've been to places where, but now it's kind of like, you want a Pulitzer Prize, and then they go online and they're like, yeah, but you co-reported that story. You didn't write it by yourself. And it's just like, it's
Oh.
such a different time.
Mm.
So my whole thing is like, I never want like any person that like ever has like a qualm with me to ever say, you could say whatever you want about me, but you'll never be able to say that I'm lazy, that I didn't work as hard as I possibly could for you, and that I didn't do what I needed to do to try and like get us to where we needed to be. Like, that's, at the end of the day, You know, so it's just like voiceover is the same exact thing. Like if I and there's been times multiple takes of characters, and like this guy right here went through like a slew of voice changes, and then I just remember I was in Tennessee with the team, and I don't drink or smoke. I'm completely straight edge. And the lead writer on the game, Zach, is like a family man, and you know he's a good guy, you know, and he's like, yeah, I'm not gonna go out. So both of us, we ended up staying in like the Airbnb, and we were just talking, and I'm just like, Lojador, this guy. I'm like, what's his deal? And he's just like, he's a family man. He's all about lucha libre and his niños and stuff like that. And just for some reason, I was like, I've been doing this guy's voice wrong the entire time. Like just like an Antonio Banderas like Puss in Boots thing just came up into my head. I'm like, I do it for my niños, you know. And I'm just like, and that's what got into the game, you know. So it's just like, bottom line, just I haven't been afraid to like make a ton of mistakes, you know, on this. And like at the end of the day, the game is so much fun. I mean, we're talking 30 um licensed professional wrestlers in the game. Jeff Jarrett, Diamond Dallas Page, British Bulldog, Legion of Doom, Andre the Giant, Jake the Snake Roberts, Coco Beware, Junkyard Dog. Like, oh my God. Then you've got 40 plus hours of turn-based RPG madness. It's like Paper Mario, Dragon Warrior, and Pokemon made love with like 80s and 90s pop culture, wrestling, and toys. Like, it's so much fun. So for me, that's like everything that I'm into. So I'm just so happy to be a part of this project.
Yeah, and you know, now that it's out and it's out in the world, like what do you want people who play the game to take away from it?
My thing is like reading a lot of the reviews, and it's like nothing against the critics because like I've been on that side,
Yeah.
you know. Um I think the reviewers that get it are the ones that lived through like 93 to like 2000 when it was like Mario RPG, Chrono Trigger, Earthbound, Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, Legend of Dragoon, Vagrant Story, Wild Arms, all of these like amazing like, you know, RPGs just like flooded the market. And the thing is, all of those RPGs by today's standards moved entirely way too slow. Final Fantasy VII, the original Pokemon, Pokemon Red, Pokemon Blue, those games, like if you give those games to like a 15-year-old, they're like, what the hell is going on? Like the guy doesn't run, and you're like, no, you have to wait like 5 hours to get the bike, you know, in Pokemon Red and Blue,
Yeah.
you know. But it was just like you became so entrenched in the characters. And the thing is, like, I think WrestleQuest moves a lot faster than those games, but the thing is, it's so deeply rooted in like what makes turn-based RPGs so special. um I've told people this before, the script for WrestleQuest is one of the best scripts I've ever like seen from an indie game. um it's one of the strongest scripts I've seen from an RPG in quite some time. Zach Manco, the lead writer, did his research, and it's coming from a journalist.
Yeah.
You know, he did his research. He knows a lot about pro wrestling. He studied. You know, he wrestled a match at PAX East. You know, like he's like
Sounds
a
like something
character
you would do.
actor. Yeah, yeah. When he got in the ring, I was just like, man, like I don't get jealous. I don't get envious of people, but I was just like, if I was lead writer on this game, my ass would be in the ring too, you know. And like this guy worked out, he took it seriously, and like when he took his shirt off when he was in the ring, it was just like he looked like he belonged there, and people thought that he was a pro wrestler, you know. So I'm just like, I was super proud. Like PAX East, I'm not sure if you saw the pictures, but we had a ring set up outside the booth, and there was like 500 people around it. Like I'm like literally looking around, and I'm like, we have the game of PAX East, you know. Like there was one podcaster, I've been on a show like 2 or 3 times, and I saw him at PAX East, and I messaged him because he was walking by, and I was like, "Oh, you should stop by the WrestleQuest booth," and he's like, "Oh, where is it?" And I'm just like, where are you? You know? So it was like I didn't even like answer him, you know. But it was just like we had so much. It's been so much fun, but like so much hard work at the same time, you know. I want people to get from this that like turn-based RP. This is the sad thing, Chris. I mean, I'm sure you know this.
Yeah.
The new Final Fantasy, it's not a turn-based RPG. So what are we doing here? Why are we even calling it Final Fantasy? You know, it's like the genre isn't nearly as revered as it used to be. but it's still a super special genre. I want people to take away that like the turn-based RPG is not dead. That like the writing, we'll put it this way, the writing in WrestleQuest is the type of writing you would want in like WWE, a WWE story mode. That's not there. The things that are addressed, like trying to get over in a company run by your father, and your father only sees you as like a jobber, or somebody that like takes kayfabe like way too seriously, like all of these things that like would never ever get into like a WWE game, they're in this RPG, So if you're a wrestling fan, you'll absolutely love it. If you're an RPG fan, you'll love it for the game mechanics, and I mean, it's got a 70 plus track list. So it's just like great story, great music. That's what you want from an RPG. So that's what I want people to take away from it. If you love wrestling, get it. If you love RPGs, get it. If you don't love either of them, this is a great entry point. So
That's awesome. I'm excited, and seeing sort of the trailers and what you guys have been doing for the last couple of years, and seeing sort of like the response and the amount of people you guys have gotten on board. It's not easy, especially for an indie game, to get that many licensed people to hop on, especially the WWE and wrestling in general is kind of a mess when it comes to trademarks and nailing
mm-hmm.
people down. So the fact that you guys were able to do that and also get people excited about a era I think people miss. It is weird to say that the 90s and 80s are like period pieces at this point
Yeah,
in
it's
time.
crazy. Yep.
But you need sort of media like this to be able to relive those situations and kind of have fun. And I think a lot of times people lose sight of that when they're playing things. They're like, all right, this has to be the Citizen Kane of games,
Yeah.
or the Citizen Kane
I
of
think the
movies when people
the
play or
Megacat
watch things.
people were so smart to make
Mm.
Randy Savage like the main guy, because it's like, if you think about like wrestlers, like Ric Flair has had his ups and downs with like the media and stuff like that. Hulk Hogan has had his ups and downs with the media and stuff like that. But it's just like Randy Savage has been universally loved for like the past 50 years, you know? And like, I mean, I shouldn't even say this for the record, but like, I like to partake in the eating of a Slim Jim at least like once every 3 days. I love Slim Jims. Like, oh my God, they're like a guilty pleasure of mine. And now they have a new thing called a Savage Slim Jim. And it's basically three of the long Slim Jims
Yeah.
pushed together. It's like 25 grams of protein. Like if I'm out taking a walk by myself, like my wife would be like, "Did you have lunch?" And I'm like, "I had a Slim Jim." And she's just like, "That's not lunch." I'm like, "Oh yes it is." I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah it is." But he's on the cover. He's on the cover of that Slim Jim, and every time you grip it and rip it, you see him right there with his bandana on and his shades and stuff, and it's just like, this man is like, I've interviewed so many people in pro wrestling. Like I've interviewed like Rey Mysterio, Paul Heyman, Dolph Ziggler, Diamond Dallas Page, like Chavo Guerrero, like so many people that like I loved as a kid, but it just like,
Mm.
man, that's the one for me.
Yeah.
Like if that could have happened, like that would have been amazing. But to be able to like represent him means like almost like everything to me, because like away from like Diamond Dallas Page, he's my favorite wrestler of all time, you know and just to be given that opportunity, like huge. And like I said, they could have went so many different ways with WrestleQuest. Like they could have been like, oh, we're just gonna do like, we're not gonna have any licensed wrestlers and stuff.
Mm.
But like this is the thing too, I'm not sure if you know,
Mm.
but like the licensed wrestlers are like, they're all summons in
Mm.
like Final Fantasy 7. So it's just
Mm.
like, if you unlock Jake the Snake, then you can summon him into the match to do a DDT and stuff. Like this game is just so smart. It's so smartly done. Like you're playing it and you're like, I feel like I'm playing Mario RPG. And then like 20 minutes later, you're listening to like music and you're doing like a cutscene and stuff, and you're like, this feels so Final Fantasy, like Final Fantasy 6, Final Fantasy 5. And you're just like, then later you're listening to music and you're like, this feels like Earthbound. Like there's so many moments, because I mean I've played through the game like 2 or 3 times, and I'm just like, the Megacat people love wrestling, but they love games too, and it's crystal clear. So it's like, to see people not get that is a little irritating, but like so many people have gotten it, so it's been fun.
Well, thank you for coming on, Pat. It's been awesome. Again, congrats on everything. WrestleQuest is out now. can you tell people where they could find it and also where they could find you?
Yeah. It's available everywhere.
Mm.
Nintendo Switch. That's my platform of choice on it because I love that I could take it. Like I'm in the man cave now. I could take it in the man cave. I could take it upstairs in the bedroom. I could take it in the living room. I could take it on the bus with me. It's just like a great like Japanese RPGs on the go on the bus. Oh my god, save anywhere. Like oh, it's so good. But it's available on PS4, PS5, Xbox, Xbox Series X. Like it's also available on Netflix, which is really cool. Yeah. So WrestleQuest.com, MegacatStudios.com. It's all on social media. If you go to Megacat Studios on Instagram, Facebook, the whole 9 yards, I can be found very easily through a Google search. Patrick Hickey Jr. All of my stuff comes up. Instagram. I am a super poster. I love Instagram. I post like 25 times a day. Like it's just stream of consciousness. Like game covers, my kids, comic book stuff. Like so yeah, it's Patrick Hickey Jr. It's just my full name all together, mushed together. And then Facebook, same exact thing. I have a public profile. I love speaking to people about comic books, video games, and stuff. So yeah, feel free to connect with me.
Thank you. And with that, bada boom.
Bada boom.
Bada boom. Oh yeah. Can you dig it?